The Las Vegas Raiders have an inside track to get the number one overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. And coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you how the Silver and Black are going to accomplish this. I'm Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report. And before we get into the whys and the hows, the Silver and Black are going to have the number one overall pick, I want to show you, as it stands right now, what the current NFL draft order looks like after Week 8. So I know right now the Raiders are 2-6 on the season, currently holding the number 7 overall pick, but I promise you this, after you watch today's show, you're going to go, holy shit, Mitch. The Raiders are really going to have the number one overall pick, which is exactly why I wanted to be able to do it. And you know what? This season's been frustrating. There's no doubt about it. But if you told me right now we get the number one overall pick and we can get a franchise quarterback, quite frankly, I think if the Raiders have the number one overall pick, Ben Johnson, come on down. Those are the reasons of why you should click the like button, and that's why you should look forward, because already this season, man, is already a year that I can't wait to just close my eyes and wake up on the NFL draft. So here we go. Here's why the Raiders are going to have the number one overall pick. I'm telling you this right now, they will not win another game this season if Luke Getsy is the offensive coordinator for the remainder. And based on the way Antonio Pierce is talking, he doesn't think that it is Luke Getsy's fault. It sounds like he thinks it's only a player's fault. And I know that the Raiders are about to get back Aiden O'Connell. But here's the thing, man. If you got Luke Getsy as your OC, I don't see how it's going to make any of a difference. When you look at the schedule, there are a few games that are winnable games for this football team. I'll say right now, the winnable games are Week 11 at Miami, though the Dolphins historically are a much better football team at home, and now they got back to it. Then you look at Week 16, you look at Week 17. Both of those games, I would say, are at least potential winnable games for the Silver and Black. But like, the honest thing here is this. When you watch the Raiders play, I almost feel like that they are getting worse and worse and worse as the season goes on. The way that this team was playing early, and I get it, they've had some injuries on the defensive side of the football, but the defense really hasn't been the problem this season. It's the offense, and the offense continuously isn't going to make any adjustments. The offense continuously is going to do the old Albert Einstein of, if you continuously try to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. Luke Getsy has not tried to change anything this season. He didn't try to change anything in Chicago, and I am actually saying that if the Raiders keep Luke Getsy, they are trying to lose. So when you have a really bad football team on top of them really trying to lose, it's why I'm confidently going to say, I really don't think that they're going to win another game this season if Getsy is the OC. So here we go. Look into that crystal ball, and this is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show, which means it's the number one question that I need the entire nation to answer. So you're about to get into the YouTube ad break. While that ad is playing, I want you to scroll on down and give me your answer, because that's going to be the question you need to answer. How many games will the Raiders win this season? My answer after this YouTube ad break. I know I've been sitting up here saying that they're not going to win another game, and even if they do win at least one more game, because some of my reasoning for some of the other teams that you're about to see here on today's show is, like you sometimes in the NFL run into a win. So even if the Raiders find a way to run into a win, there's still going to be a projection to be right around that number one overall pick. When you go back through the history books and you look at the teams that have picked number one overall, you can see that if you have that 3 win, and the Bears in 2022 had the number one overall pick. The Carolina Panthers, I know technically this would have been Chicago, but the Panthers traded it. I just wanted to show you the worst records for each season. But the Jags in 2021 had the number one overall pick. If the Raiders are somewhere between 2 and 3 wins, which I'm sorry, that's where I see them being this season, because they're not good enough on offense, and I don't think that they think that they need to make any changes, or at least that's what I'm getting from Antonio Pierce. So with that being said, I think the Raiders are going to have the number one pick. Worst case, top 3 pick this season. Let's go to the next reason of fear why I think the Raiders are going to have the number one overall pick. The Panthers will win at least one more game this year. And I know that some of y'all are like, well, Mitch, how can you say that Carolina is going to win at least one more, but we're not going to win another one? It's a fair point. But my point here basically is, like, if the Raiders don't win another game, and if the Raiders legitimately go 2-15 for the remainder of the year, if Carolina wins one game, okay, and they got the New Orleans Saints right now, who definitely are struggling a little bit. They also have the New York Giants, who are a team that struggles a little bit, and both of those games are at home. So if you can win one of those games in the next 2 weeks, the fact that the Carolina Panthers beat the Las Vegas Raiders in week 3, that means if both teams finish with a 2-15 record, the Las Vegas Raiders have the number 1 overall pick. So the trend of today's show is I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you all the teams that are ahead of the Raiders right now from 1 to 6, and I'm going to tell you why it's not going to be that case next season. If you're ready for the NFL draft already, hit that subscribe button. The amount of fans that have already told me, Mitch, I wish I could just sim this season like a Madden season and jump into next season. From the bottom of my heart, I get it. I hear you. I feel your frustrations. But from the bottom of my heart, I'm asking for all y'all to still rock with me during the season. We'll start doing some draft prep. We'll continuously look at some of the prospects that we can look at. But if you don't already know, we have the best draft coverage here on the internet, and you're going to get picks. We get picks before you see them on TV. Quite frankly, sometimes we're 2-3 picks ahead of the NFL draft coverage. Let's go to the next reason here of why the Raiders are going to have the number 1 overall pick. One of the big reasons. The Titans and Patriots, they play this week. So you're talking about the team that would be picking number 2 overall against the team that would be picking number 3 overall. And one of those teams has to come away with a win. Though Chugs is probably going to be sitting there going, well, they can tie. You're right, they can tie. But the fact that both of these teams, and more than likely somebody's going to come out on top, I would say when you look at both schedules of Tennessee and you look at the schedule of the New England Patriots, I would say that it's more important for the Titans to get a win this week, though again, the Titans are 1-6, the Patriots are 2-6. When you look at the Titans' schedule as it stands right now, or excuse me, they're 1-7. You can look at it and it says the Titans, week 9 against New England. After that, though, as you can see, not a lot of great winnable games there. I will say this, though. If there's one game that you should look at, week 18 versus Houston, I don't think that the Titans are better than the Texans, but the way that division is going, would it surprise anybody if the Houston Texans have the ability to rest all their starters week 18 because there's not another team? Colts, Jags, and Titans are not going to be anywhere close to the Houston Texans. But then also 2 Jags games. Sometimes those games can get a little bit funky. My point is, where the Tennessee Titans, there are some interesting games in there, but I do think that they need to win. When you look at New England's schedule, guess what? Look at that Week 18 game against Buffalo. Another great example of a team that I think the Patriots could get a win, because if you look at the Bills right now, with the Dolphins, with the Patriots, with the Jets, that's going to be a team that I think could potentially rest their starters Week 18. When you look at the rest of that schedule, though, for New England, if they don't beat Tennessee this week, I do get a little bit more nervous about some of their other games. But then again, the NFL showed me this. The Patriots just beat the Jets. It was a little bit of an upset. Bottom line, I think both of these teams could get a win in Week 18 for the simple fact of their division leader could potentially be resting their starters. It obviously also determines, playoff seeding and whatnot. But if the Chiefs continue to roll and they're going to have the top seed, I think that you're going to see some teams potentially rest their starters. I got some more reasons coming up here in just a moment of why I think the Raiders have the inside track to the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Before we get into that, though, Game Time is here, and you know who I can always count on? Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS. That's CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. I like being able to go watch football games. I like being able to go create lasting memories, but I also like to be able to save money. And here's just a little bit of a pro tip for all the Raider fans out there. If you do plan on going to a game, when you download the Game Time app, go look at the Game Time picks. If you're going to make the trip, or even if you already live in Vegas, like the best deals that you're going to get, and even if you go to Vegas and you're like, I don't even know if I want to go to the game, I just want to go hang out with the nation. I know a lot of people that do that. At least wake up on that Sunday and look at the ticket prices, and as the closer and closer the event gets, once it gets down to a price that's good for you, because I'm telling you right now, I was looking at the Game Time prices this past week against the Chiefs, and the amount of tickets that went down because of the amount of empty seats that were in Allegiant Stadium, I'm telling you, if you wait and you go on Game Time, you're going to get a hell of a deal. I'm telling you right now. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. There's also a lot of other stuff to do in Las Vegas. Quite frankly, I would plan on booking something besides a Raiders game if you want to leave Las Vegas with a little bit of your smile on your face. Maybe go to Adele, maybe to go to a comedy, or you can go to the best circus right now in Las Vegas, which is currently held at Allegiant Stadium. Let's go to the next reason here of why the Raiders are going to have the number 1 overall pick. The New York Jets will win at least one more game as well. The Jets currently are 2-6. They are currently a little bit higher than the Raiders right now in that draft order. But, I know the Jets are struggling. And don't get me wrong, man. It puts a smile on my face to see how frustrated Devontae Adams is over there. And with that being said, a team that's lost 5 straight games, the Jets are a better football team than the Raiders. And I don't think that that's a hot take. I think the Jets, out of all the top teams that are very high right now in the draft order, I'll say that I actually think that the Jets are one of the better teams in that mix. And when you look at this entire schedule from top to bottom, New York, I would imagine, runs into a win. They're also going to be one of the only teams out of the 2-6 teams that's actually trying to win football games. Aaron Rodgers needs to win. Devontae Adams needs to win. The Jets team, they need to win football games. That New York media is already creating a lot of chaos. And I think Aaron Rodgers wants to be able to, kind of continue to build his legacy. So the fact that the Jets are 2-6, I hear you, but they will at least win another game. Let's go to the final reason here of why I think the Raiders are going to have the number 1 overall pick. The Jags and the Saints, that's picks 5 and then pick 6. The reason why that's important is because the Raiders go up against Jacksonville in Week 16, and they go up against the New Orleans Saints in Week 17. And I know that I hate saying this out loud because I want the Raiders to take care of business against New Orleans, and I want the Raiders to win against Derek Carr. But I think Jacksonville is a better football team than what the Raiders are right now. And if this game was at Allegiant, I do think it could be a little bit different. But you got to give credit to the New Orleans Saints fans. They are a rowdy bunch. And that's going to be a fan base that still shows up Week 17. It's going to have a lot of attention all around it. And I think Derek Carr is going to be fired up to go in it. Don't get me wrong. On game day, I'm going to be rooting for the Raiders against the Jags. I'm going to be rooting for the Raiders against the Saints. If it comes down to potentially having the number 1 overall pick, I'll be honest, I might turn these shows into Thursday Night Football because it does help us out better long term. But Trevor Lawrence and Derek Carr, if both of those teams are healthy compared to the Raiders, if we're as healthy as we can be, I think that both of those teams will beat the Las Vegas Raiders. So here's the thing coming up. What happens if the Raiders do have the number 1 overall pick? I know we're at 7 now, but if all of these things happen, we have the number 1 overall pick. After this YouTube ad break, I'm going to tell you what happens to the Raiders if they do end up with the number 1 overall pick. If you're the Raiders and this is not what happens, then shame on you. You got to move on from Antonio Pierce, which obviously means that you're moving on from Luke Getsy. I personally would still try to hold on to Patrick Graham because Patrick Graham shows me year in and year out that he is a really good coach. And the fact that this defense is still playing at the level that they are with the pieces that are missing on defense, on top of the fact of how bad the Raiders' offense has been, Patrick Graham's one of the best coaches in the NFL. Maybe a team tries to steal him away. Maybe PG tries to go somewhere else. But I know this. If you're the Raiders and you have the number 1 overall pick with top 4 money and salary cap space, with extra draft capital, you got to give a blank check to Ben Johnson, which might scare Mark Davis a little bit. But I think after this, after seeing McDaniels fail, after seeing how Gruden failed, after seeing how Antonio Pierce is currently failing, you got to write a blank check to Ben Johnson because I'll tell you this, I don't think there's any way in hell Ben Johnson fails as a head coach. He shows week in and week out how smart he is with an offense. He shows week in and week out that he's playing chess and a lot of other people are playing checkers. And I know that we wanted AP to work. I still want AP to work. But if you have the chance to get the best guy available, why the hell wouldn't you do it? People got mad when the Raiders drafted the best guy available in Brock Bowers. How's that going? Ben Johnson is taking best guy available, and that's why I want it to happen, and you let him pick his quarterback. If he wants Cam Ward, let's run it. If he wants Shedeur Sanders, let's run it. If he wants another quarterback, I might disagree with it a little bit. But at the end of the day, if the Raiders have the number 1 overall pick, Ben Johnson and a quarterback, let's make it happen.